Israel-Hamas war. Why must the U.S. support Israel? U.S. President Joe Biden said on Sunday he believes the Hamas militant group must be eliminated, but there should be a path to a Palestinian state. After top U.S. officials warned the war between Israel and Hamas could escalate, Biden did not think American troops would be necessary on the ground as Israel has one of the finest fighting forces, even as American warships headed to the area amid growing clashes on Israel's northern border with Lebanon. Israel unleashed a ferocious bombing campaign over Gaza in retaliation for unprecedented attacks by Hamas 8 days ago that killed some 300 Israelis, mostly civilians. When asked if he believes Hamas must be eliminated entirely, Biden said, "Yes, I do, but there needs to be a Palestinian Authority. There needs to be a path to a Palestinian state," he said during a CBS 60 Minutes interview broadcast on Sunday. The U.S. president warned it would be a mistake for Israel to occupy Gaza, but that taking out Hezbollah and Hamas was a necessary requirement. He said, "It would be a mistake for Israel to occupy Gaza again." Israel captured and occupied the West Bank, Gaza, and East Jerusalem in the 1967 Middle East War. It withdrew its settlers and troops from Gaza in 2005, before Hamas's takeover of the Strip in 2007. The conflict has sent tensions soaring. There is a risk of an escalation of this conflict, the opening of a second front in the north, and of course, Iran's involvement. White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan told CBS earlier in the day, Gaza authorities say more than 670 people have been killed there, a quarter of them children. Casualties are expected to rise as Israel prepares for a ground assault on the tiny, densely populated enclave that could start within days. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin announced deployment of a second aircraft carrier group late on Saturday, calling it a sign of our resolve to deter any state or non-state actor seeking to escalate this war. The aircraft carrier, the Dwight Eisenhower, will join a small fleet, including the massive Gerald R. Ford aircraft carrier in the eastern Mediterranean. Iran is the elephant in the room, a U.S. official briefed on the situation said about the increasing military presence. The carriers are accompanied by warships and attack planes. Every effort is being made to stop this from becoming a regional conflict. Biden said his message to Iran is to not escalate the conflict. Iran Foreign Minister Hossein Amir-Abdollahian warned on Sunday his country could act, telling Al Jazeera that it had conveyed a message to Israeli officials that, if they do not cease their atrocities in Gaza, Iran cannot simply remain an observer. If the scope of the war expands, significant damages will also be inflicted upon America, he warned. Biden told CBS the threat of terrorism in the U.S. has increased due to growing unrest in the Middle East. He said, however, the U.S. can take care of wars in Israel and Ukraine and still maintain its international defense. Violence on Israel's northern border is already escalating. Lebanon's Iran-backed Hezbollah fighters launched attacks on Israeli army posts and a northern border village on Sunday. Israel retaliated with strikes in Lebanon. The U.S. is urging Israel to hold off on its ground offensive to allow humanitarian efforts for Gaza's residents trapped in the area, several U.S. officials said. Sullivan discussed a new weapons package for Israel and Ukraine that would be significantly higher than the previously reported $2 billion. He told CBS that Biden planned to have intensive talks on the package this week with the U.S. Congress, which has been hobbled by Republican struggles to pick a new Speaker of the House of Representatives. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, speaking in Tel Aviv on Sunday, said the U.S. Senate could move first to approve more funding for Israel. "We're not waiting for the House of Representatives," he said. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham said on Sunday he is traveling to the region with other senators in coming days to push continued negotiations between Saudi Arabia and Israel. Graham said he intended to introduce a bill that would allow military action by the United States in conjunction with Israel to knock Iran out of the oil business if Iran attacks Israel. Humanitarian crisis. U.S. government officials also said they are mobilizing to help alleviate the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, anticipating a brutal ground offensive. Israeli officials have made clear it will not be an easy or swift campaign. It faces the challenge that scores of hostages seized by Hamas on October 7 could now be held in a warren of underground tunnels, which its soldiers must clear to destroy Hamas. Biden, in a message posted on X, formerly Twitter, said, "We must not lose sight of the fact that the overwhelming majority of Palestinians had nothing to do with Hamas's appalling attacks and are suffering as a result of them." The U.S. has appointed former ambassador to Turkey David Satterfield as a special envoy for Middle East humanitarian issues. His focus would be to promote the safety of civilians, the State Department said. "We're pushing Israel to delay any action on the ground," said one U.S. official briefed on the situation. Asked directly if the U.S. was pushing Israel to delay its ground war for civilians, Sullivan told NBC, "We are not interfering in their military planning or trying to give them instructions. However," he added, "the U.S. is telling Israel any actions should follow the law of war and that civilians should have a real opportunity to get to safety." U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said on Sunday that the Egyptian-controlled border crossing into Gaza would reopen, and the U.S. was working with Egypt, Israel, and the United Nations to get assistance through it. Hundreds of tons of aid from several countries have been held up in Egypt's Sinai Peninsula for days, pending a deal for its safe delivery to Gaza and the evacuation of some foreign passport holders through the Rafah crossing. Sullivan told NBC, "So far, we have not been able to get American citizens through the border crossing, and I'm not aware of anyone else being able to get out at this time." He added that he wanted to make sure the civilian population that remained in Gaza had access to food, water, and safe shelter, and in an interview with CNN said Israeli officials had recently turned the water pipe back on in southern Gaza. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham told Reuters that the Israel assault on Gaza would be bloody. "I expect urban warfare on steroids," he said. "There will be cries from the international community for Israel to stand down, but I think it's imperative that we give Israel the time and space to destroy Hamas." Reporting by Nandita Bose, Catherine Jackson, Christopher Bing, and Steve Holland in Washington. Writing by Raphael Satter. Editing by Heather Timmons, Bill Burkrot, and Sandra Mailer. Don't be easy to war to read. Rewriting. Israel-Hamas war. Why must the U.S. support Israel? After senior U.S. officials warned that the confrontation between Israel and Hamas might escalate, U.S. President Joe Biden said on Sunday that he thinks the terrorist organization Hamas must be exterminated, but that there should be a way to a Palestinian state. Biden said not believe American soldiers would be required on the ground, as Israel had one of the finest fighting forces, even as American warships went to the region amid escalating tensions on Israel's northern border with Lebanon. In reprisal for massive Hamas strikes 8 days ago that killed around 1,300 Israelis, largely civilians, Israel launched a savage air campaign over Gaza. When asked whether he thinks Hamas must be completely eradicated, Biden said, "Yes, I do. However, a Palestinian Authority is required. There must be a path to a Palestinian state," he stated in an interview with CBS 60 Minutes that aired on Sunday. The U.S. president cautioned that occupying Gaza would be a mistake, but that taking out Hezbollah and Hamas was a necessary requirement. He went on to say, "It would be a mistake for Israel to occupy Gaza again." During the 1967 Middle East conflict, Israel seized and occupied the West Bank, Gaza, and East Jerusalem. It evacuated its settlers and forces from Gaza in 2005. Just before Hamas seized control of the territory in 2007, tensions have skyrocketed as a result of the battle. There is a risk of escalation in this conflict, the opening of a second front in the north, and of course Iran's involvement. White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said earlier in the day to CBS, according to Gaza officials, over 2,670 individuals have been murdered there, with a fifth of them being minors, as Israel prepares for a ground attack on the small, heavily populated enclave that might begin within days. Casualties are anticipated to soar. Late Saturday, U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin announced the deployment of a second aircraft carrier group, citing our resolve to deter any state or non-state actor seeking to escalate this war. The Dwight Eisenhower aircraft carrier will join a modest force in the eastern Mediterranean, including the enormous Gerald R. Ford aircraft carrier. Iran is the elephant in the room, a U.S. person informed on the issue said, referring to the growing military presence. Warships and attack planes accompany the carriers. Every effort is being taken to prevent this from escalating into a regional confrontation. Biden has warned Iran not to exacerbate the crisis. Iran Foreign Minister Hossein Amir-Abdollahian cautioned on Sunday that his nation would take action, telling Al Jazeera that it has sent a warning to Israeli authorities saying that if they do not cease their atrocities in Gaza, Iran cannot simply remain an observer. If the scope of the war expands, significant damages will also be inflicted upon America, he said. According to Biden, the danger of terrorism in the United States has escalated as a result of escalating upheaval in the Middle East. However, he said that the U.S. can handle battles in Israel and Ukraine while maintaining its international defense. The violence on Israel's northern border is already on the rise. On Sunday, Iran-backed Hezbollah militants in Lebanon attacked Israeli army installations and a northern border town. Israel responded with strikes in Lebanon. According to various U.S. sources, the U.S. is encouraging Israel to postpone its ground attack in order to enable humanitarian assistance for Gaza people besieged in the region. Sullivan spoke about a new arms deal for Israel and Ukraine that would be significantly higher than the previously reported $2 billion. He told CBS that Biden expected to have rigorous negotiations with the U.S. Congress this week over the package, which has been hampered by Republicans' inability to choose a new House Speaker. Speaking in Tel Aviv on Sunday, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer suggested that the Senate first authorize extra cash for Israel. "We're not waiting for the House of Representatives," he told reporters. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham said on Sunday that he would go to the area with other senators in the coming days to press for further talks between Saudi Arabia and Israel. Graham said he planned to present legislation that would allow military action by the United States in conjunction with Israel to knock Iran out of the oil business if Iran strikes Israel. Crisis of humanitarianity. U.S. officials have also said that they are preparing to assist in alleviating the humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza, expecting a harsh ground attack. Israeli authorities have said that the effort would not be simple or quick. It confronts the problem of hundreds of hostages taken by Hamas on October 7, being kept in a maze of subterranean tunnels that its forces must clear in order to defeat Hamas. In a statement on X, previously Twitter, Biden stated, "We must not lose sight of the fact that the overwhelming majority of Palestinians had nothing to do with Hamas's appalling attacks and are suffering as a result of them." Former U.S. Ambassador to Turkey David Satterfield has been named as a special envoy on Middle East humanitarian problems. The State Department said that his primary goal will be to promote civilian safety. "We're pressuring Israel to postpone any ground action," said one U.S. official informed on the issue. When asked whether the U.S. was pressuring Israel to postpone its ground war for civilians, Sullivan told NBC that we are not interfering in their military planning or trying to give them instructions. However, he noted, the U.S. is reminding Israel that any measures should be conducted in accordance with international law and that civilians should have a real opportunity to get to safety. According to U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, the Egyptian-controlled border gate into Gaza will reopen, and the U.S. is working with Egypt, Israel, and the UN to get assistance through it. Hundreds of tons of supplies from various nations have been held up in Egypt's Sinai Peninsula for days, awaiting an agreement to ensure its safe delivery to Gaza and the evacuation of some foreign passport holders through the Rafah Gate. Sullivan told NBC that so far, "We have not been able to get American citizens through the border crossing, and I'm not aware of anyone else being able to get out at this time." He went on to say that he intended to ensure that the civilian population that remained in Gaza had access to food, water, and secure shelter, and that Israeli authorities had just turned the water pipe back on in southern Gaza. According to Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, Israel's attack on Gaza will be brutal. "I expect urban warfare on steroids," that's what he stated. "There will be cries from the international community for Israel to stand down, but I think it's imperative that we give Israel the time and space to destroy Hamas." Nandita Bose, Catherine Jackson, Christopher Bing, and Steve Holland in Washington contributed reporting, as did Raphael Satter, who wrote the piece. Heather Timmons, Bill Burkrot, and Sandra Mailer edited it. That's all for today's video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. If you like this video, please subscribe, share it with your friends, and give it a like. Your continued viewership is greatly valued. Bye and have a nice day.